Now, as a trade unionist, I felt obliged to come here today because we are in a situation now where a Tory-led government is actually trying to divide and rule us. A situation where we have a Prime Minister who doesn't hesitate to refer to fellow human beings as swarms, or, as he did on Wednesday during Prime Minister's question time, a bunch of migrants.
Shame on him! Shame!
This kind of dehumanizing language has become common currency once again in sections of the mass media, and I think in particular of the Daily Mail, the Express and the Sun, with ominous echoes of the treatment of Jews fleeing Nazi Germany in the 1930s.
George Binette is a trade unionist from London. You have come here to Dover to demonstrate against racism, and you say that now the politics is divide and rule, divide workers who are native from workers who are coming from other countries. How is this system working?
Well, the current government obviously is trying to push through an unprecedented so-called austerity agenda. It is seeking to make massive cuts in public sector spending and to privatize the remaining parts of the welfare state, including the National Health Service. It's actually appealing to sentiment against refugees, against asylum seekers, and migrants more generally, in an attempt, obviously, to actually get votes off of UKIP, but also divide working class people against each other and undermine opposition to the austerity agenda.
Now, in those circumstances, if you are a serious trade unionist, you need to stand alongside the people in the Kent Anti-Racism Network and be on the streets today to oppose the National Front, to oppose the English Defence League and the various extreme right-wing fascist splinter groups that have assembled outside Dover Priory Station today. I live in northeast London, in Hackney, one of the most diverse boroughs in Europe. It's a situation where UKIP got only 2% of the vote at the last general election. We're not particularly concerned with the revival of fascism, and yet in that same borough, 35 years ago, the National Front had its headquarters in Hoxton. Today, it's an irrelevance in that part of London, but in other parts of the country, support for UKIP on a racist basis has grown to a point where they got over 12% of the vote at the general election. Support for groups like the EDL, National Front, etc., may not be visible at the polling stations, but it is clear when they come here that they have been emboldened, and not just by cans of Stella Artois.
Obviously, there's sections in the mass media that are promoting the idea that people are coming over here for welfare benefits primarily. People are risking their lives, living in squalor in the conditions of the camps at Calais and Dunkirk, for instance, because they want to, quote, sponge, unquote, off the British taxpayer. And there are certainly sections of workers who are not organized in trade unions particularly, who actually fall for those myths and lies that are being peddled by very powerful newspaper proprietors.
Part of the working class believes to Cameron or even to the far right. Why?
Yeah, well, it is certainly true that significant numbers of working class people voted for the Tories or for UKIP at the last general election. I think this is partly a legacy.
Fuck the Nazis.
Partly a reflection of the history of the British Empire, and partly, obviously, people historically have been tempted to dump on those below them in periods of economic insecurity. And what's happened here with support for UKIP is obviously a symptom of what's happening in much of Europe more generally. With the rise again of Marine Le Pen's Front National in France, with the emergence again of Pegida in Germany, and obviously very substantial votes in Scandinavia for the likes of the Swedish Democrats. in the United States, it's taken the form of support for the Donald Trump candidacy within the Republican Party. But we are seeing a polarization as well, with the growth of, or renewal of, radical social democratic and socialist politics embodied in this country by Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell in the Labour Party.
It is a climate. It is a climate where, unfortunately, overt racism and xenophobia have once again become respectable in mainstream politics. And as I said earlier, David Cameron is not hesitating, despite his talk several years ago about a caring conservatism, to play his own version of the race card in an attempt to divide and rule over people in the context of the most serious attacks we've seen on the welfare state since its creation in the late 1940s. Well done once again to everyone who has come here today in a show of human solidarity, but also, I trust, in a determined display of opposition to fascism. People who will not allow those who are black, those who are Muslim, those who are East European, those who are South Asian, to be scapegoated for the very real social and economic problems a town like Dover faces. We know very well that the fact that there are more than 50 shops closed in this town centre is not because of immigration. We know very well that high rates of unemployment are not caused by immigration. We know very well that the crisis that we face in education, in the health service, and in our social services more generally are not caused by immigration. In fact, we know, and we must spread the message yet again, that our welfare state was in no small measure built by migrant labour in the 1950s, the 1960s, and beyond. And as a branch secretary for Unison, I am extremely proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with the members whom I represent, whatever their skin color, whatever their religion or absence of religion, and wherever they or their ancestors may have come from. Solidarity, sisters and brothers, let's say to the National Front, Dover tells you, you are most certainly not welcome here.